Here's something a little different. This is an industrial PA sound amplifier. A little bit different approach when they made this unit. You have this choice of 4 microphone inputs and 2 separate auxiliary inputs. You have a master volume and a bass and treble control. For the 4 microphone inputs, you have a balanced XLR input, you have an input attenuator for each channel, each 4 channels, and you also have an ability to switch the microphone on and off without adjusting the level. You can also adjust an EQ on the front right here from flat or speech. The speech has a bass cut, and the flat just sends the audio straight through with no equalization at all. This unit delivers 120 watts continuous RMS. Here's the back with the 4 microphone inputs and the 2 aux inputs, as well as the input attenuators for the 4 microphone channels. You have the heat sink right here for the 4 audio output transistors, and you have a large selection of audio output options. It's a very basic unit. It's very hardcore. It's old, and I found it. I also got it with this microphone here. I haven't tested the microphone, but I know the amplifier works perfectly, and to test it, we're not going to use a stereo speaker, we're not going to use a test speaker, we're going to use an actual PA speaker, that right there. And that should be hardcore enough for something that is hardcore as this. Let's test it out. It's extremely loud. It actually sounds really good. What I'm doing is I'm powering this off the 8 ohm output, which actually bypasses the output transformer, which gives you full frequency response. Taking off the top cover, which is made of a nice thick steel, reveals a very simple but organized design. See all the sources are mixed up here on this board, and you can see the preamplifier card, which also works together in combination with this mixer panel right here. This accepts your XLR balanced inputs and unbalanced line inputs. I tested all 4 XLR line inputs, or mic inputs, and they do work. They sound pretty good. You can see the things wrapped in aluminum foil here are actually little transformers, little balancing transformers. I checked the electrolytics and they're okay. All the electrolytics through this unit are mostly within tolerance. You can see the power transformer and power supply and these nice 4 large Motorola rectifier diodes. These are very hardcore, and you can see the very nice Mallory American-made electrolytic capacitors, rated for 50 volts DC. Can't tell what the actual microfarad value is, but it's blocked by the clamp. But they're fairly serious. Nice big power transformer. I did replace the power cord, and you can see my work right there. Little circuit breaker. Right here, I believe I'm going to add a speak-on jack to connect speak-on cables. You can see the TO3 output transistors. There's actually 4 of them in there. NPN and PNP. And you can see the output transformer. The 8 ohm tap on this actually just goes straight off the output section. It bypasses the 70 volt line matching transformer, so you get the full frequency response of the amplifier. With the transformer, in most cases on most of these, it's about 50 hertz to 15 kilohertz frequency response, which is sufficient for PA duty in large, type of installations, but not good enough for hi-fi use. And you can bypass that transformer usually with a 4 ohm or an 8 ohm output and removing a little jumper lead, and I'll show you on the back what I'm talking about shortly. And that is the audio direct, bypassing the output transformer. You can see the amplifier driver board here. See if I can get a good view of that. I'm going to have to pick up this board, or pick up the whole amp. kind of see a view of it down there. Something I find a little strange is most of these electrolytics, these gray ones, are ROE German capacitors, and these blue ones, those casings coming off this one, but they're all okay. They test well. They seem to be relatively decent quality for the time period. So that's the inside of the Altec University amplifier. Here's where I was talking about on the back. You can select 70.7 volt distributed line output, 25 volt or 40 volt. 40 volt's not very common, but it's interesting to see that they included that with this. And you can see separately an 8 ohm and a ground output, and that does not come off the output transformer. That comes straight off the power amplifier output. I'll do a bench test and see if the 120 watts continuous holds true, but with most Altec Lansing products, it's usually not very far off. You can select the mic input attenuators, and the mic inputs, there's 4. There's also 2 auxiliary inputs, unbalanced. It's kind of neat because this was in a transitional stage where university was starting to become its own thing, its own entity, and at this point when the sample was made, it was more like a series rather than its own brand name. It's still an Altec product. It even says it nice and bold right there, and even on the boards, I don't know if you can see right there, it says it right there, and it's got the logo on the driver board as well. See if we can get a view of it down here. I think I saw it. There it is. See the Altec logo right there. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is an Altec amp, not a university. And you can see their stamping. If you look at their speaker cabinets, their horns, their manta ray horns, the multi-cell horns, all their old amps, the green-faced ones, these blue ones, the black ones, they all have these square little stamps on everything that says AL on top, and sometimes it'll be 4 digits for a year, or it'll be 2 digits for a specific line of assembly. You can see one down in there as well. There's even one up here, and I guarantee there's one on this board over here somewhere, but I can't see it. Let's go ahead and whip this back together and listen to it a little bit more. Let's see how it sounds through a speaker that, this probably was made to drive multiple different kinds of speakers, mostly PA install speakers, like horns. But this thing's more capable than that. Let's give it a more triumphant, more oomph. Let's give it a better, more capable loudspeaker. One little interesting tidbit is with all the inputs down, these are off, I just have that up there, you still get some audio through, a little bit of cut through. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm playing some music that would be typical that this unit would play at some kind of event. I can't guarantee that this microphone will be able to survive this. It actually sounds really good for what it is. It's nice and full, it's clean, and works well. It sounds pretty good for a PA amp. Figure it was worth making a video about since it's blue. Of course, when you turn it off, it gives you a little bit of a pop. That's typical with these kind of amps. That was insane, and that's a 500 watt speaker right there. That's pretty impressive. For the audio output leads, I'm using the 8 ohm direct output off the amplifier circuitry itself, bypassing the transformer. And what I have going on here is I have a speak-on connector on the leads of this community loudspeaker over here. That way I can plug it into the multiple PA amps, different ones I have. I always use speak-on, and I don't use bare wire. I have a speak-on coupler right here, and I have a generic speak-on cable which terminates into lugs here, crimped and soldered. And what that allows me to do is just make a quick connection. It looks kind of how you doing, but it works, and it's actually pretty easy to do one-handed. And you can lock it as well. Sound amp and the community speaker. What do you think of it? How's it sound out there?
It's really, really loud.
Did you say not loud enough? Is that what you needed?
Turn it down.
Okay, I'm done.
Jeez.
I will do an in-depth video on the loudspeaker that we used to test this amplifier, but the point of the video today is about this amplifier, and I really have to say that I think it truly does its rated power of 120 watts continuous. I would say it was doing every bit of that in that test. I actually had the master volume at about 6 right here, and I had that at 8 right there, and I was speaking a couple inches away from the Shure SM58, going direct, balanced into mic 1 with the microphone turned on flat. I didn't have the speech low cut filter turned on, I just had flat. Works really well. You know, 120 watts continuous doesn't sound like a whole lot of power in the PA world, but it's all about how efficient your speakers are and the way you put everything together. There's right ways and there's wrong ways, and something as simple as this, a microphone, an audio source, and a couple efficient speakers like this Community R series, you really can you can really go far with just a little bit of power. And I wouldn't say this is a little bit of power, it's quite the beefy power amp, and you know, I've had several of these PA amps, and this one has to be the best one I've had. And I'm not meaning rack mount power amps for PA equipment like pro audio touring equipment. That's a different realm. But this has its own league, and it holds its own. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. And yes, my dad was kind of surprised in that clip previous to this one. Yeah, there's a little bit of language there. I don't think he realized exactly how loud it was going to be. But I wanted to find the limits, and I just approached clipping in that audio test. I don't know if you can hear it. It remained very solid, very clear, and very intelligible. Thank you for watching. Microphone here. I haven't tested the microphone, but I know the amplifier works perfectly, and to test it, we're not going to use a stereo speaker, we're not going to use a test speaker, we're going to use an actual PA speaker, that right there. And that should be hardcore enough for something that... For the 4 microphone inputs, you have a balanced XLR input, you have an input attenuator for each channel, each 4 channels, and you also have an ability to switch the microphone on and off without adjusting the level. You can also adjust an EQ on the front right here from flat or speech. The speech, you have the heat sink right here for the 4 audio output transistors, and you have a large selection of audio output options. It's a very basic unit. It's very hardcore, it's old, and I found it. And I also got it with this as a bass cut, and the flat just sends the audio straight through with no equalization at all. This unit delivers 120 watts continuous RMS. Here's the back with the 4 microphone inputs and the 2 aux inputs, as well as the input attenuators for the 4 microphone channels. Here's something a little different. This is an industrial PA sound amplifier. A little bit different approach when they made this unit. You have this choice of 4 microphone inputs and 2 separate auxiliary inputs. You have a master volume and a bass and treble control.